today is chosen because all of us think that the mantra for good health, at least the common perception now, if you look at all strata of society, is that the minute you buy organic food, you know, you're health conscious and that's it. But what we want you to understand, or what we want to help people understand, is that just choosing organically grown food or produce is not sufficient. So the way it is cooked, the way it is processed also impacts the health component of the food that we choose. So today what we're going to discuss is the process of cooking. Dr. Manasa is going to cover the Ayurvedic aspects. So that's called, the process is called Samaskara, and the cookware, the Karana. So these are the two things. We're not discussing food as in food, you know, what is the different types of food and their impact on health, but just the process and the cookware is what we're going to discuss today. So when it comes to cookware, we all know that there are lots of things in the market now: aluminium, cast iron, earthen, ceramic, Teflon, then modern methods. So many new technologies have come. And of course, some of the good things and the bad things that are there in our kitchen, like aluminium foil, cling films, plastic, etc. Just let's have a look, and we welcome you all to discuss and put your thoughts, you know, at the end of the session or through the chat box so that we can chat. So like I said, one needs to be aware of the cooking methodology. So there's an interesting, you know, classification of cooking methodology based on whether it's water, whether it's fat, whether it's just heat or smoke. So water is what we are all familiar with: steaming, boiling. Of course, for some of the, you know, non-vegetarian dishes, poaching, braising. But stew, you know, we make our regular kootus and things like that. All those are vegetable stews, etc. We use the water media. And then we have the fat media, which is, you know, doesn't have such a great reputation: roasting and frying. And then the heat media, which is grilling, broiling, baking, and the smoke media, which is smoking of food. So before we go further, let's have a short quiz. So you see these different items on this slide. I want each of you to type in the chat box, when it comes to vegetables, cutting of vegetables, right? Are big chunks good or small pieces good? Please type in the chat box. So good. I think everybody is knowledgeable about that, because vegetables need to be cut as big chunks and immediately cooked. So all of us are, you know, for lack of time, or we think we're planning better, you know, we come across people cutting vegetables for the week, you know, putting them in plastic containers, storing in the refrigerator, etc. So a lot of nutrition is lost this way. So cutting vegetables into big chunks, cooking them immediately with very little water, not boiling them, is what you know, preserves the nutrient value of the vegetables. Next is rice. To drain or not to drain. So you could think of it as pressure cooking, or, you know, the traditional way of cooking rice with a lot of water and then draining the rice. So for rice, what is your answer? To drain or not to drain? Traditional. Some people are saying traditional. Please type in the chat box. Yeah, so when it comes to rice, of course, I'll ask Dr. Lalita Priya also to chip in here. When it comes to rice, nowadays what we get is processed rice, right? Polished rice. So already a lot of nutrients are removed from the outer layers. First of all, we need to wash the rice sufficiently so that any of the arsenic which is there in terms of the soil contaminants where the paddy is grown is removed. And that's the reason why we wash rice. So ideally, we just put a small quantity of water to soak the rice and then wash it and drain it and then cook it. So because we are pressure cooking with the right amount of water and allowing it to absorb, what we're doing is we're preserving the macronutrients in terms of carbohydrates and proteins and the fiber. But if we drain it, it's very likely that those considerable amount of those macronutrients get drained as well. So I think the balance is between what kind of rice that we are using. If Dr. Lalita Priya would like to chip in here just to tell us about what her thoughts are on the way rice must be cooked.
Yes, good evening everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so yes, as Dr. Sandhya rightly pointed out, it's just the arsenic which needs to be washed and drained, and the water should just be sufficient to cook the rice. It should not be drained after cooking. A lot of people think that the starch is going out while the cooked rice is being drained off the water, but there isn't a considerable loss of starch, and it's not going to help you lose weight. So it's better to cook the rice with just adequate water and pressure cook it to retain most of the nutrients. Yes, what Dr. Sandhya said is absolutely correct.
Thank you, Dr. Lalita.
Yeah,
next we come to eggs. Should eggs be cooked or eaten raw? We come across all this paleo diets and stuff like that. So eggs cooked or raw? Please type in the chat box. Quickly. Not many answers coming in there. So eggs must be cooked. And the reason we need to cook eggs is that there is this avidin in the eggs, which which actually binds to B7 vitamin biotin, and in the raw state. So if we cook it, the avidin gets destroyed and releases the B7. So you will not get the nutritive, although egg is considered a complete protein and eating it raw may be appealing in terms of getting the maximum protein from it. Cooking it is very important in order to get its full nutrient value. Next, coming to milk. So we notice a lot of people buy milk and they heat the whole quantity for the day and keep it, and then take out whatever they want and reheat it. So is reheating good as a single, as a one-time event, or you take out only the required quantity of milk and heat it? Answers in the chat box, please. Small quantities or the whole quantity? Whole or small, you can type. So we have a few answers. Most of them said small. Somebody says whole quantity. So what happens when we keep reheating the milk, the whole milk, is that supposing you buy 2 liters of milk for the day and you heat the whole 2 liters and keep it, and then again heat it as in when you make coffee or tea or want to give your child a glass of milk, is not such a good thing, because the lactose in the milk interacts with the proteins and there is considerable protein loss. So although milk is considered to have a good quantity of protein, most of it will be unavailable or destroyed by the time you keep reheating it during the day. So it's good to keep milk as it is and take out only the required quantity and heat it for use then and there. Now coming to oils. So again, oils, I think everybody is aware of, that the more you reheat oil or reuse the heated oil is bad, because it forms a lot of toxic compounds like aldehydes, etc., which are definitely known to be carcinogenic. So I don't think we'll have a quiz there because oils are a no-brainer. So over the last century, a lot of cooking practices have evolved. So we have a lot more modern methods of cooking. And so the traditional primitive, fire in the kitchen is kind of being replaced by different microwaves and induction stoves, toasters, etc. So it's not just what we eat which is dangerous, but also these smokes. So a lot of research has been done, and the WHO has stated that 3.8 million premature deaths every year are due to the respiratory lung diseases because of exposure to open fire, smoking fire in the kitchen. Because we don't see that so much now in the cities, but still in villages, in smaller villages in South India and North India mostly, I think people still do have these kind of kitchens, and which is very dangerous and is predisposes to lung cancer. So because we are a preventive and supportive care organization and we deal with a lot of cancer work, I thought it is important that I mention that certain methods of cooking, are carcinogenic. That means they induce cancer. So although we have every year a list of products which go through this, to designate them as whether they can produce cancer or not, there's an agency in France called IARC, International Agency for Research on Cancer. So a lot of products can be presented to them in order to do a research and find out if they're carcinogenic or not. It's very difficult. So thousands of compounds come, but actually over the last so many decades, only 100 have proven to be carcinogenic. That means without a shadow of doubt, they are cancer producing. So of those I've mentioned here, especially with relation to food. So Aflac Toxin is a kind of a fungus that happens when we store grains, peanuts, basically, groundnuts and peanuts in a very moldy fashion. Supposing it's not dried adequately, there's a lot of fungus around it. That's called aflatoxin. So that is definitely, if we use those kind of peanuts, then they're definitely carcinogenic. They damage the liver. Then meat, when it is cooked at very high temperatures, as you can see on this barbecue, there's all those black spots, right? So those are the heterocyclic amines which are released, which again are very dangerous and cancer producing. So in cured meat, of course in our country we don't use that so much, where it is left salted and cured, or spoiled food and very high protein foods, most of them are non-vegetarian foods, they can release what are called nitroso compounds, N-nitroso compounds, which again are carcinogenic. And of course, smoked food, products of combustion, especially in grilled, barbecued stuff, they release polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which again are carcinogenic. So these are the cooking methods that we must be aware of, which are not very healthy. So now what has happened, like I said, cooking practices have changed, right? And almost every house has a microwave, has an induction stove, or a hot plate and a toaster, etc. And forever we keep saying, oh, microwaves are not good, use the traditional cooking practices. But it's been there from 1945, since the person discovered it accidentally while walking across a microwave producing thing when he found that his chocolate had melted. So obviously it had some effect on the food. So since many decades, microwaves are being used. And so let's look at it and understand, is it good or bad? So most microwaves, they operate by this electromagnetic radiation. So electrical heat is converted into, electrical energy is converted to electromagnetic energy. And they operate at a frequency of 2.5 gigahertz. And that is easily absorbed by water, fat, and sugar. So more water food contains, the more quickly it will cook. And that's why high fat, high water food is very good to cook in a microwave. So it also helps to preserve more of the healthy pigments and the nutritive value. So a lot of research has been done, and we now know that there's nothing risky about microwave radiation, because we always worry. Electromagnetic radiation is the same as cell phones, right? And we are always scared to constantly use cell phones. We get a lot of warning information on that. And microwaves are so designed that the covers are intact, and the radiation is also does not have a chance of escaping out. So there is nothing wrong about using microwaves, but there is a problem about heating plastics within the microwave. We'll go into the details of plastics later. So when it's used correctly, that it's not a damaged microwave, etc., there's nothing to worry about. So could there be nutrient loss? Again, lots of research has been done, particularly for certain foods like mushrooms, broccoli, most vegetables. In fact, you can preserve color and you can preserve nutritive value because the cooking time is short. You're not boiling it in a lot of water, you're not pressure cooking it. So with small amount of water, you can cook it quickly and you can retain the nutritive value of food. Especially for mushrooms and broccoli, it's been studied quite a bit, and they've said that nutritive value is preserved to a large extent only in microwave cooking. And of course, we must never use plastic containers because heating food in plastic containers can trigger hormone disruption. We'll come into that later. The other thing is toasting food, burnt or charred food. Like you can see here, there's a beautiful golden brown toast. Apparently, toasting bread improves its nutritive value because it makes the food more easily digestible, removes the, dries up the, or rather reduces the fat content. I'm not sure. Maybe Dr. Prameya can corroborate my statement. And we are all tempted, you know, sometimes toast, and a blog called burnttoast.com or something where people talk about the benefits of burning toast and eating it. But what happens when we char these foods? Okay, this is a burnt dosa. Many times we do that, we don't want to throw away the dosa, we try to scrape away the black portion. Similarly, when we're making upma, it gets stuck to the bottom of the kadai, and then we try to scrape that, but again it is burnt. So that will have a dangerous compound called acrylamide. And that's supposed to be a potential cancer risk as well. So this happens basically with carbohydrate-rich foods, which are liable to be burnt. So we must be careful that we're not allowing the food to be burnt. Now coming to cookware, we have different types, right? And recently, a lot of interest is being shown in clay pots, earthenware, cast iron. So we have the aluminium, which is easily heatable. So a lot of families still use aluminium, anodized aluminium or just plain aluminium. It has a lot of advantages because it conducts heat very easily, and you know you can heat up stuff very easily in it. Also easy to wash and clean. But what we normally say is, again, some research has shown that it could cause, there's some association with Alzheimer's, but that's not really proven as yet. So there's nothing really harmful about using aluminium vessels. Only thing is storing it. So for cooking, it's fine. Only thing is storing it and also using very citric or acidic stuff while cooking aluminium may cause aluminium to leach into the food. And actually speaking, there is a lot of aluminium in the that we are exposed to through the environment. So very infinitesimally small quantities of aluminium can get into our system. But barring that, you know, storing food in aluminium is not a great idea. And earthen pots, of course, have a lot of advantage. The disadvantage is that it takes a very long time to heat up on a typical gas stove, and you can't use it in other modes like induction, etc. But it does, there is uniform heat distribution, and food stays hot longer in that clay pot. And also there is the possibility that you get some good minerals from the clay. And coming to the, what is this, the ceramic pots. They are fine as long as we know that they're of very good quality and they don't have lead coating inside. Otherwise, what happens, there is the possibility of lead toxicity through slow leaching from the, especially ceramic, again, people use it for slow cooking, and there is a possibility of lead leaching into the food, especially overuse over a period of time. There could be scratches on the inside, and through those scratches, the lead can leach. So very important that we find a ceramic pot that does not have lead coating. So like Le Creuset or whatever, but those are very, very expensive and may not be really practical for everyone to use. Many of them are very decorative, so they look very nice when you're inviting people home and you want to cook in it and serve in it and all that. So as a one-off thing, it may be all right, but regular long-term use is not recommended. And coming to cast iron, which has been there long enough and which is kind of making a comeback. Cast iron is very good. It's one of the staples, just like stainless steel and cast iron. They're really coming back into use now. And really, there is nothing that we need to worry about except that it's difficult to maintain. We need to season it well and also make sure that we don't cook acidic food in that. Because again, the iron content will increase, the food tastes bad, and it may cause problems with digestion and so on. Then coming to Teflon. So again, since 1946, DuPont was the company which marketed Teflon and it became world famous. That was the brand name. And it's really, changed our lives because it's made it so much easier. We don't have difficulty in making dosas. It's non-stick, easy to clean, etc. Because it has the lowest level of friction of any solid material. But what we must remember is, while making Teflon, this PFOA, perfluorooctanoic acid, is used. And that's a very toxic chemical to the human system. So a lot of companies, the lesser known companies, where you get cheaper Teflon products, may still be using it, although there is a legislation that they should not use it, especially some Chinese products and things like that may still have it. So we must be very careful of the Teflon coated utensils that we buy. And there's no harm in using a good quality Teflon coated pan or a pot, but we must make sure that we change it frequently, because even the minutest scratch, it's difficult to maintain, right? You can't use metal ladles, etc., because it can scratch it. You must also clean it carefully. You cannot use those steel wheels to clean it. And the minute there is a scratch or the minute you see a peel off, you have to replace it. So from an economic point of view, it may be more expensive to use Teflon, but if you're using it very carefully and for limited dishes, then it's a good option. So we all know that, cooking, there are 2 points of view, right? Raw food is good. Certain raw foods are good, and certain times cooking actually destroys the nutrients is what we learn if you overcook it, overboil it. So when it comes to preserving or having cooked food, we always think, can I get the maximum benefit in terms of actually the anti-cancer properties? We know that tomatoes contain lycopene, the cruciferous vegetables have those sulforaphanes, fish has omega-3, and there are so many herbs with so many medicinal properties. So we need to understand certain methods of cooking for these specific things which I've chosen today. So tomatoes. So contrary to popular belief, like people think, I'm having tomatoes in a salad, it's so good for me. And tomatoes are rich in lycopene, so I'm getting all that lycopene from eating a whole tomato, etc. Strangely, we need to cook tomatoes. So with a little bit of fat, any good fat, any little oil, you can use olive oil or whatever, and you need to make it into a paste. It has to be cooked, eaten and cooked into a paste, a curry or a chutney to get the maximum lycopene out of it. So it's not the raw tomato which gives you all the benefit, but the slightly cooked. And when it comes to herbs, whether it's coriander or mint or parsley or whatever, basil, whatever, if we use it as a infusion or a decoction, actually you get the maximum benefit. Of course, we do sprinkle it on food stuff that we prepare. We do get some benefit from that, but using it as an infusion of chutneys or whatever gives us the maximum benefit. And cruciform vegetables, especially cauliflower, broccoli, etc., they have those sulforaphanes. So having them 3 times a week, say lightly cooked, steamed, which is the best option, or maybe microwaved slightly with a little bit of water, gives us cancer protective properties of sulforaphane that can come only with that little bit of cooking. And fish, fried fish, frozen fish, all of that is bad. If you do that, then the omega-3 content is lost. So the best way of cooking fish apparently is by steaming it or by just baking it lightly. So there are other newer ways of cooking that have come up. One is the slow cooker, where you can leave food the whole day. You can go to work. It's a boon for lots of working women. You switch on the slow cooker in the morning and leave it there, and you come back, your meal for the evening is ready. It is a good option. Only thing is, again, like I said, we have to make sure that the lining of the cooker is of good quality and there is no crack or leak of lead, etc. Second is air fryer. So air fryers, people think it's very nice because you have to use very little oil. You can have your chips and fried stuff with using very little oil. So it's a very healthy option. But we must remember, frying is frying. So you can't, just because you have an air fryer, you can't have fried food every day. So for a one-off thing, it's a good option. And then you have this barbecue, which again, as long as you don't char it, it does make some of the food very tasty. And as one-off options for having a meal, all these are fine. When we look at freezing as a method of storing food, we can preserve the anti-cancer properties of the nutrients if we freeze the food quickly to minus 20 degrees. Okay. It's important that we don't keep freezing, thawing all the time, because then that will spoil the nutrition of the food. So most of the foods that I've said can be frozen for later use, as long as we do a one-time freezing to minus 20 degrees. We don't lose the nutrient value. Then looking at the kitchen staples, all of us in our kitchen are very fond of cling wraps, aluminum foils. They've really changed the way we can store food, leftovers, etc. While aluminum foil is acceptable, it's it's not a problem. Like I said, we are exposed to so much aluminum contamination in the environment, and that little bit of aluminum which comes when you wrap food in the foil, which may get leached into the food that is wrapped, is okay, as long as you don't use aluminum foil to wrap acidic food, something which with tamarind, tomatoes, that kind of vinegar, etc. It's absolutely fine to use aluminum foil. Cling wraps have really got a rap on the knuckle in the last few years because they are non-biodegradable plastic. So as much as possible, we should try to avoid it. But even if we do use it, we must make sure that it does not touch the food which is there in the container. There should be a gap between the food and the cling wrap, then you can keep it in the refrigerator. But I think as a community now, we are trying to do away with plastic. So many homes are stopping the use of cling wraps. What we can use instead is these silicone stretching kind of covers, which are really nice, expensive, but we can buy it. And of course, let's not forget the humble stainless steel dabba, which is really, really useful, reusable, easily washable, everything. Doesn't look as attractive as, cling wrapped or silicone covered dishes, but nevertheless, it serves its purpose. So coming to the last part of my talk before I hand over to Dr. Manasa is plastics. So a small quiz here. If you can type in the chat box, these are the various plastics we have in our everyday life, right? Carry bags are still going around. We have the PET bottles, we have the water bottles, we have the food containers, the plastic tubes, tubing material, and of course all our soap containers, etc. We all know, many of you would have seen a number on the bottom of the plastic bottle, any container. You know which numbers are good. Say numbers 1 to 7, do you know which are good and which are bad? Can you just type here? What numbers are good for you to, okay, I won't say good, which are okay for you to use, and what are bad? 5, 7, okay. Anybody else? Can you all type the numbers? 157 is okay. Polycarbonate is okay. Even numbers are bad. One is good or bad, one is not okay. Okay, let's give you the lowdown on this. So this is what we use every day, right? We see it all the time. This is called polyethylene terephthalate PET bottles. And we've been using it for food and drink for such a long time. And because it prevents oxygen from getting in and spoiling the product, it helps to keep the carbon dioxide. So all our soda bottles are made out of this. But it contains antimony trioxide. It could be a carcinogen. It's not proved, but it's they've done some lab experiments and found that it can produce some changes in the cells. And the longer it's left in the bottle, the more danger there is for this antimony to come out. Especially we see in cars, a lot of people keep these PET bottles with water for a long time, you know, for emergency use, whatever, in the car, standing in the sun, the plastic is exposed to heat and warmth of the sunlight, etc. All of which is very, very bad. And these are single use, they must be discarded. Many of them cannot be recycled in any way. We are struggling to find ways of recycling this. And this belongs to the category 1. So these are the most commonly used and popular plastics. So the thing that you see in column 3 is the number that you look for at the bottom of these plastics. So PET is what I just showed you, the water bottles. Then you have the high density polyethylene, then the vinyl chloride, then the low density polyethylene, which is what our paper bags are, plastic bags are made out of, polypropylene, then polystyrene and other resins. So 2, 4 and 5, please make a note of it, because it's an important thing for you to keep looking and being careful about. So 2, 4 and 5 are considered to be relatively safe, whereas 3, 6 and 7 are absolutely not safe. They cannot be used for food, etc. So polycarbonate is what milk bottles for babies was made of, and also, you know, many toys, etc. All of which are quite dangerous. So 2, 4 and 5 are the good ones. 1, 3, 6 and 7 are not good. So 1, though we continue using, we have to quickly discard it, and it's only a single use, because all of us tend, you know, we have this, our Indian mentality is always to preserve stuff. So I have seen people even in the soap containers, right? The soap container also, they wash, they take off the label, and many times they bring juice or buttermilk when they're traveling, because it's a big container, sturdy, won't spill, etc. All of which is very bad. We have, as a community, we tend to kind of reuse these things. We don't feel like throwing them away. So we need to pay attention to these things. So best is to avoid plastic food storage containers altogether. For anybody who comes to us at Prameya, we always recommend switch all your plastic containers to either glass or stainless steel. Because every single category, whether it's safe or unsafe, can leach some material. You know, we may not know it now. Maybe after several years, we'll see the impact. So like I said, you have to look at the bottom. And if you find 2, 4 or 5, it's generally safe. But 3, 6 or 7 could be high risk. And if at all you're going to use them, try not to store very acidic food like all this tomatoes, vinegar, etc. Because that again initiates the process of leaching into the food. And if it's worn out badly, scratched, you have to throw it. You have to throw it and recycle it. And definitely don't use plastic in the microwave or the dishwasher, because again, dishwasher, you use a lot of chemicals to clean, so that again ruins the plastic. Now, no talk from Prameya is complete without mentioning bisphenol A. So this is a additive which is found in many plastics like polycarbonates and epoxy resins. So these epoxy resins are there in the caps. You know, you have these glass bottles also with caps. The inside of the caps are lined with this epoxy resin. Even they're used in the tin cans. You have these Coke cans or, you know, canned food that you get. What is so scary about this BPA, as we call it, is that it has health effect on the brain, the prostate gland of the fetus, infants, and children. So a lot of children constantly drinking soft drinks from cans and bottles that can affect children's behavior. We've seen the incidence of ADHD, all of that going up, right, in the last few decades. So there could be a possible link between BPA and that. And even in older people, it can be linked to high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. So the scariest thing is they have estrogen mimicking properties. So as we know, in women, certain cancers like the breast cancer, the ovarian and the uterine cancer are all linked to estrogen. So this BPA has a property where it mimics the estrogen. So it goes and sits into the receptor, the estrogen receptor. So the body thinks it has to produce more estrogen. So because it produces more estrogen when it's not required to produce, and because of this wrong signal that it is receiving from this plastic, the amount of estrogen goes up, and that can promote certain breast cancer changes. So we must make sure that any plastic that we use is BPA free. So why am I telling you all this? So we can't, there's so much of plastic in the environment, and we are always tempted, right? When you get 10 containers for 300 rupees or something, you say, oh, it's a good deal, let's buy. But we have to make sure that the quality is good, or it is BPA free, it belongs to the category of numbers that I mentioned, etc. So just to summarize, how do we reduce exposure? Like I said, look for BPA products, and definitely, keep in mind that you cannot use products which are 3 or 7 because they may very likely contain BPA. And never heat plastic because that heat will break down the plastic and allow the BPA to come into the. And try to reduce the use of cans and go for fresh. It's a bit difficult, but
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah. And try to use alternatives like glass, porcelain, stainless steel, especially when you're using hot foods and liquids instead of plastic containers. So now I hand over to Dr. Manasa, who will tell us what Ayurveda talks about the cooking process and the vessels that you use or the containers that you use. Like I said, at Prameya, we try to integrate traditional stuff with the modern methods, whether it's for medicine, for helping people overcome certain diseases, or even simple things like these cooking methodologies. So over to you, Manasa.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhya ma'am. So whatever the process we do for the food, it is called samskara. The process includes everything. It could be washing, it could be chopping, it could be deep frying, it could be sauteing, or it could be pounding as well. They impart few qualities into the food and they take out few qualities from the food. That's why we call it as samskara. It, at the most of the times, it increases the good quality of the food and takes out the unwanted things which we don't want. As before we discussed, as Sandhya ma'am said, the need for washing the rice, similar things that we do for the food. Next one. Yeah, so commonly few things that we do, if we know, like roasting. The roasting makes the grinds very light. It could be even the flour. For example, if someone is not doing well, we make ganji for them, right? Or the khichdi that we make. Initially, we roast the rice and the dal and then we cook it because it becomes very easy for digestion. So roasting makes the same grain very easy for digestion. And the elephant yam or the suvarna gatte, which we are very familiar, it has to be cooked with the tamarind juice, or else we are aware that it causes itching in the throat, and even the person who cuts it can experience the itching in the finger. So the process, the samskara, what is done with the tamarind juice, it makes the elephant yam more edible. And the bamboo shoots, what you can see here, is a hot favorite of the people from Malnad and even northeastern part of India. It is used very vividly. But with this bamboo shoot, you can't bring it and use it on the same day. It has to be chopped finely and soaked it for 2 to 3 days so that the cyanide content in it goes away. So these are the samskaras. They make them light easier for digestion, or it gives the better elements to our body from the process. Next. So similarly, we have the habit of soaking nuts overnight so that the antiphytates go, so that we don't experience the bloating and becomes easy for digestion. Even if we roast the nuts, similarly, it will be easy for digestion. Few people with what we say pitta prakriti, with dominance of pitta or acidic nature, they cannot take garlic and ginger directly. It will trigger the acidity. So sauteing it in butter or ghee, it reduces the tikshnata or the intense properties of the garlic and ginger, yet it gives the benefit or the medicinal properties what we are looking at. And when we cook something of the legumes like the dal, they are very heavy for digestion. So generally we all have the practice of cooking dal with a drop of oil, which makes it more easy for digestion. And even the seasoning what we do for the dal, it could be with the garlic or it could be with the hing, it makes it very easy for digestion. In few areas we have seen when we make ghee from the butter, like North Karnataka part they add garlic and turmeric, and the southern part few add tulsi, because for many people ghee itself can lead to phlegm accumulation. Tulsi and turmeric added to the ghee not only adds the flavor, but it also helps in the removal of extra phlegm that is formed. And in North Karnataka, the arthritis, it's more over there. So the garlic helps them to come out of it. And even the simple things that we do, like we chop the bitter gourd and we soak it in turmeric, salt and sugar, so that extra bitterness is gone, right? And as many of us, we believe curds are very healthy, but no, they are not. Curd has got some inflammatory property, which means it can increase the swelling, it can cause some unwanted effects in the throat, and it's really not, and it's heavy for digestion. So by churning the curds, it will break those properties and it becomes more acceptable for the body. Next one. Similarly, roasting the lady's finger with a little oil and hing, it will not only take out the sliminess of the lady's finger, but it becomes more easy for digestion. I don't know how many of you are aware, but generally lady's finger is not given to the kids below 3 years because it is very heavy for digestion. And whatever sweet dishes we make, generally cardamom is the important component. But it is not just to infuse some aroma so that it becomes more, the house fills with the fragrance and everyone, it tingles our sense and you have the craving to eat that sweet, right? But actually cardamom, it has natural camphor in it. Okay, sweets, they are usually made up of a lot of sugar or ghee, which can result in the phlegm accumulation. The natural camphor in the cardamom, it helps to prevent that extra phlegm accumulation. And also researchers have proved that cardamom can prevent the extra absorption of the cholesterol that is present in the food. Maybe we have seen that few people have the habit of chewing cardamom post a very heavy meal. Similarly, the food, its quality changes with the process what we do. If we boil milk with turmeric or jeera, it becomes easy for digestion and it takes out the phlegm. If we boil the milk with the sugar candy, the kal sakre or the kemp kal sakre, it makes it very coolant. And the milk when boiled with different herbs, it carries the action of those herbs which are infused in those milk. So not every time, not all the process will bring in the good qualities. For example, we all love to munch on the potato chips, but deep frying potatoes, they give rise to carcinogens. So be cautious what process you are using. We have food from same source. For example, the parched rice, that is the aralu, battada aralu, the poha or the avlaki, and the puffed rice or the mandaki or the murmura what we use, they are from the same source, that is paddy and rice. Parched rice, it is made from whole paddy. Flattened rice and puffed rice, they are made from the rice. But the action, they have entirely different action. Parched rice, the aralu or the laja, it is very easy for digestion and it is very good in fever, diarrhea and dysentery. But whereas the murmura and the poha or the avlaki, they are very heavy for digestion. So the source of the food, behaves differently when different process is applied. Next one. And nowadays we always look for a alternative, healthy alternative. At times we are so overcautious that we are doing wrong things. We see many ads, replace everything with the honey. You can pour honey into your coffee. You can bake cookies with the honey and add. Wherever you are putting sugar, add honey. In fact, honey has more glycemic index than sugar or the jaggery. Honey is not a replacement for sugar or jaggery because honey should never be heated. When we heat honey, a molecular changes and it gives to a certain molecule which is not digested, and in future the person will end up in different types of arthralgia. So never heat honey. And in fact, if you are the person who's enjoying the hot dosa, hot pancakes or hot idlis with the honey, please stop it, because honey should be used only at the room temperature. So honey can be used once the food is cooled down, like you are adding it to some leha or to the food. It has to be at room temperature. It should never cross the room temperature. Coming to overall things, Ayurveda never accepts reheating food, like cook in the morning, reheat in the night and eat it. But at point we accept that our life has become a rat race and not every time it is possible to cook freshly. But as far as you can, please cook a fresh food and consume it immediately. Avoid repeated reheating. Like, it's easy to say, someone says like, make this gravy base for a week, store it in the freezer, whenever you want, take it and cook it. Lot of nutrition loss will be there. At the same time, it is not a healthy practice. If it is inevitable, practice something, but don't make a habit of preparing too much for too long to just thinking that preparing it all together will save you some time, because whatever we are doing is for our health, right? At the end, if you don't have that good health, you'll not enjoy whatever you have got. So kindly focus on that. And as already dealt, the burnt food and overcooking, they are not good. So it has to be a properly cooked food. And the one tip that comes from Ayurveda is always the cooking has to be from the slow to medium, mid-sim. So never cook the food in very high flame. You might think that you will cook fast, but it will spoil the nutrition or it will overcook it. It won't be cooked properly. So it has to be between the sim and the mid flame. And coming to the cookware, like most of the cookware is already dealt. Here I'm talking about silver and copper. Silver, no doubt they are good. You can, instead of just keeping it for some festivals or some special occasions, you can use it on daily basis, but make sure you don't use very sour food with the silver. They have those antibacterial property, and they release some ions which are good for our body. Even copper. In fact, recently I read an article which said Ayurveda prescribes storing water in copper vessel overnight and drinking it in the morning. No, actually Ayurveda never asks anyone to drink a lot of water in the morning. The water is always thirst is always indicated by the tongue. It is individual. Okay, if you want to use copper vessel, no doubt you can use it. It is a micronutrient which is required for the body. It can be in very moderation. But the most important thing to be remembered with copper is it should not have an oxide formation on it. The green color, which generally forms very quickly with the oxygen exposure and a little of water on the copper, can cause copper toxicity. So when you are using copper vessels, make sure there is no oxide formation, and at the same time, no sour food can be cooked in copper vessel. And as already dealt, the storage container, we love plastic, but and nowadays we try to use newer fancy things. But for the ghee should never be stored in a bronze container because it can turn into poison. And for most of the household things, our favorite thing to preserve the pickle is fed jars, and even in the market we get it in fed jar. See, salt itself is very corrosive. Anything preserved in a plastic, the plastic itself leaches into the food, and the salt of the pickle, which will be in excess content, it corrodes, it starts corroding the plastic and it leaches very badly. So whatever pickles you make, kindly go for a glass container. So to sum up, what we want to say is we don't have to be very skeptical or doubtful or very afraid of newer technology, but we have to be very judicious. Like in the case of microwave, it should not be old. We should not hold our face too close to the microwave, or it shouldn't be used continuously or for regular purpose. As in air fryer, you should not eat those delicacies on a daily basis. And coming to utensils, it's always ideal to use a non-reactive utensils, and cast iron is definitely best when compared to Teflon. But in case if you can't give up Teflon, okay to use it, but make sure the coating is there intact. Even in case of other aluminum vessels where it is coated with the steel, make sure the coating is intact. It is not changed. I mean, it is not broken or it's not old, and you have to change it frequently. In case of cast iron, you can pass it on to your legacies, but it is not same with the Teflon. Okay, and every process for every cooking methodology, what we have will have a reason behind it. There is something. Some rationale behind every process that we use for a food. So try to know why we are doing that process so that you can get the maximum benefit out of it. So the question and answer time, we would like to know if you have any questions.
So that was actually very interesting to listen to the Ayurvedic principles behind cooking. Traditional methods are always, they have proper rationale which we have failed to understand, and it's quite an eye opener to know that buttermilk, for instance, everybody thinks, especially South Indians, always think curd rice is the panacea for all digestive problems, whereas we may actually be doing a lot of harm by consuming curd rice on a daily basis. So those are very interesting things. Thank you so much. And if there are any questions, we'll take it. We'll also like to hear if Dr. Anita Priya has any points to add, any tips to give us. That'd be great.
Yeah, drinking coffee or tea in silver tumbler is fine, no problem.
Yes, so good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, ma'am, Dr. Sandhya and Dr. Manasa. Very informative talk and so much to learn. Every day is, I think, great learning for all of us. Yes, like what both Dr. Sandhya and Dr. Manasa said, it's very important to know what are the kind of vessels that we are using and the cooking methods as well. Both are equally important. And we need to, I personally feel we need to have equipment for each type of cooking. So we just can't, I don't think it's practical for all of us to switch to cast iron, because it's not easy to do all the technical stuff with it and coat it and then start using. So maybe minimize the use of Teflon coated pans and tawas, because that's like a quick way to get done with work. But the days you're having a little time on hand, maybe, just make your dosas on the cast iron tawas. And for cooking, I would recommend people to use hard anodized vessels, because that saves a lot of time and it's easy to clean. Difficult to get house help sometimes, so quickly you can finish your cooking, and there isn't any leaching of aluminium happening, because the aluminium is processed at a very high temperature, and only then the vessels are created. In the Western countries, hard anodized is always coated with non-stick. That way, in India, I think we get very few companies with the combination of hard anodized and Teflon coated vessels. Most of the hard anodized is without the Teflon coating. So that is a safe option. You can use it for your chapatis and parathas. Have more of the hard anodized, because steel becomes difficult to clean, and sometimes the steel takes up a lot of oil when you're cooking with steel vessels. To prevent the charring of food or burning, you need to add oil. And again, there are issues with using too much oil. So I feel the kitchen should have a variety of vessels. If men are listening in, they're going to kill me for this, because the monthly budget is going to go up. But I think ladies, I think all of you, please be smart and have a variety of cooking equipment at home. Life will be easy and healthy.
Thank you. That's such a lovely thing to hear. And I think it's very important, like you said, to have a variety for different purposes. And anodized kadais especially are a great boon. Like you said, you know, it's so easy to maintain. We don't have to worry about things being stuck on it and things like that.
Like the Teflon coated things, we need to see the slightest scratch, I throw it away. But then the hard anodized is safe, because even if there's a small scratch here and there, very safe to use, nothing to worry. So saves on the cost as well.
Thank you, Lalita.
Thank you, ma'am.
So somebody said, can you please repeat rice cooking method?
Okay, so rice, I think just take, if it is an old quality rice, old rice, 1:3. The water is 3 times the quantity of rice that you take. Just rinse it once or twice and cook it in the pressure cooker with about 3 to 4 whistles. But if it is a new rice, like the shopkeeper will usually mention, so then just 2 or 2.5 cups of water is enough for every cup of rice. Pressure cooking is the best method. The open cooking method, where you add more water and drain the water after cooking rice, is not acceptable. People used to do it in the past, but over time, we have a lot of research studies to show that we are losing a lot of B vitamins and minerals in the process of draining the water, thinking that we are only removing the starch. So it's not a very healthy cooking method.
Yeah.
So pressure cooking is the best.
Yeah. Supposing, you know, as a one-off case, one day you're making, say, a vegetable, the pulao or biryani or something, where you want the rice to be a little.
The you know, the grainy texture. Yeah.
So can you then drain it, or even then we
No. Even
water?
then, yes, no. So when you're making the biryani, it's better to, if you're using basmati rice, it's better to soak the basmati rice for about 20 minutes in water, in cold water, and take your cooker, or there is another type of cookware called AMC cookware, which is made with the surgical steel. It's a little costly, but I mean, each container, each cookware is like very, very exorbitantly priced. But if you can afford it, it's good to have that. And just a drop of oil, and you put the vegetables and your masalas, and the rice 1:1 water, because the basmati rice has already soaked in water for 20 minutes. When you do it just 1:1 and you cover it with a heavy lid, you get lovely textured biryani and pulao. So it doesn't stick. The rice grains do not stick. So even in a pressure cooker, if you're doing it in a pressure cooker, take a heavy bottom pressure cooker, and you put your vegetables, you put the masalas, and the basmati rice or the jeera samba rice, which is soaked. If it is jeera samba, you need to put a little more water. So for basmati, if it is 1:1, for jeera samba, it's 1:1.5. And allow the water to boil, and then add your salt and chili powder and all that, and then you put the soaked rice into it and cover it and cook it on a low flame for about 15-20 minutes, and just 1 whistle. So that is the trick. So 1 whistle, and you can immediately take it off the flame and put a little bit of cold water on the lid of the pressure cooker, so the pressure is released. And then you can open it in 5 minutes. You will get fantastic biryanis and pulaus, with like how you get in the hotels, with less oil as well. So with very minimal oil. It's just how you can cook it smartly. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. That was really good tip.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
There's another question. Can we discard the soaked chana pulse water, or we can use same soaked water for cooking?
So it's better to throw away the water when we soak dals, I mean the pulses especially, so that we are losing out the flatulence causing substances. Many times whole pulses are notorious for digestive issues. So people tend to have a lot of gas and belching, sometimes indigestion, sometimes loose stools. So it's better to discard the water in which the pulses are soaked. When it comes to dals, sometimes when we tell patients to make adai dosai with the dals, we don't give them pulses as an option. We tell them to soak the dals overnight. Even then, we tell them to discard the water, because sometimes too much of dals in the batter can cause indigestion or acidity issues. So it's unless it's a combination of too much of dals, like an adai dosa batter, and if it is like whole pulses, those kind of things, you need to discard the water. But otherwise, when you're just cooking dal for your rasam or your sambar, rinse it once and cook it. And after cooking, please don't discard the water. The cooked dal water is very nutritious, so that should be used.
So also vegetables, isn't it? When we cook vegetables, if you put more water, you can use that
as a stock for your
rasam,
sambar. Yes. Very true, ma'am. Vegetable water also should never be thrown, cooked water.
Then what would be the heating methodology? Microwave, gas, induction, hot water, steam? What is the preferred combination? Stainless steel, earthenware. It is presumed that slow cooking ensures retention of nutrition. So I think you have said that we need to have a variety of stuff for different purposes. Yes, slow cooking does help to get the maximum out of food. Like Manasa was saying, from sim to medium heat is what you need to keep, not high heat and immediate cooking, except in the case of microwave. So there a lot of studies have been done where mushrooms, broccoli, some cruciferous vegetables, the nutrition is retained when you do it. Can we store curry leaves, coriander, mint leaves, ginger in different plastic boxes in the fridge? Please let us. Okay. Yeah, like I said, we need to do away with plastic, but these are okay because they are dry. They are not chutneys which have been processed with tamarind or some citric juice or anything. So as dry contents, you can definitely store. I think now you also get cloth bags, isn't it, Dr. Lalita? You get
yes, ma'am. We do get cloth bags.
So we can make those things as useful things to store in the fridge, but really no harm.
Yeah, so I would also suggest that in case you really want to keep it in plastic containers, you can wrap the coriander leaves and curry leaves with a tissue paper. So, that way it stays fresh for many days, and you are also preventing the direct contact of the leaves with the plastic. So that is something which you can consider, and you can just throw it off after some days. It just, sometimes the leaves do get a bit rotten, even if it is kept in the fridge. So the final few things, you can just throw it away with that paper napkin. So that could be another option.
As milk should be heated in small quantities, how can we prevent it from curdling? So I think we are getting half liter packets, 1 liter packets, whatever. So, unless you're buying, say, 2 liters of cow's milk or something like that, most of it is already homogenized, processed. What do you say? What is that? Pasteurized, etc.
So many times it's also ultra heat treated, ma'am. So it's like pretty safe. But in case you're buying about 4 packets, if it's a big house, and if you're buying 4 half-liter packets per day, and you don't want to boil all the 4 packets at one go, you can put it in the deep freezer. So you can boil 1 packet in the morning, and if you want to take out the next packet only late in the evening or at night, you can take it out from the freezer. At least the milk won't get spoiled. Sometimes in summer, the chances of spoilage is higher. So if you just keep it in the fridge from morning till evening, and you take it out late in the evening after dinner to boil milk, and it might just curdle. So to be on the safe side, you can keep it in the freezer and take it out 1 or 2 hours before you actually boil it. So at least you can prevent the curdling process of milk.
Please share your thoughts on instant pot cooking.
I think it's quite a rage in the West.
Yeah.
I do not know how much of a hit it is in the country as of now, but maybe I think few years down the line it might be a hit. I have no clue, ma'am. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
and I think we need to kind of look at the process, like what Manasa was mentioning in the take-home message. We have to use our rationale on why we are choosing a certain process, not because it's in fashion or others are doing it, or whether it suits our style of cooking, eating, etc., and whether it's really proven to be efficient.
Yeah.
I think those are the things we need to consider
Really,
before we
yeah.
choose a cooking.
Choose something. Correct. True.
Vegetables and greens to be cooked open or closed?
So it's a very dicey question. It depends. Sometimes it's better to leave it open, I feel, because sometimes the color changes when you close it and cook it, because there are certain acids which are released in the cooking process, and that condenses on the lid and falls back into the greens, and it kind of gets a brownish tinge. So it's a little unappealing when you're eating it. So if you want to retain the green look in it, it's better to just keep it in an open pan, and at a medium heat you just cook it. I would prefer to keep it open.
Yeah, and also, like I said, a lot of studies to show that microwave cooking of vegetables in particular, quickly you kind of cook it with minimum water, it preserves the nutrition, especially for mushrooms, broccoli, cruciferous vegetables, and also maintains the color. And when we are sauteing it, I agree with Dr. Lalita, keep it open, minimum after you steam it also. Quickly just steam it for 8 minutes. You have the retained beans and all that, retain the beautiful green color.
Yeah, the fresh green look, yes.
Is it good to have frozen fish and chicken? So I think I mentioned that frozen fish actually loses its omega-3, the nutritive content. It's always good to have fresh fish, but of course we can't always, if you're not living by a riverside or we can't get fresh fish. We have to make do with whatever we get. But steaming fish actually is healthier. Okay. Another question for Manasa, although it's not in the scope of today's talk. Today's talk is only about process and cookware, but there's a question about right posture for eating, squatting or sitting on a chair. That's Manasa's question.
The right posture is obviously the Sukhasana. You should be sitting comfortably in a clean and neat environment where you are comfortable. Okay, and at few places we have a practice where we use a little higher, it's called Mane in Kannada. So you sit on that and bend and eat so that you don't overeat.
Yeah, palaga. Yeah. Okay, so I think that was a good discussion. Thank you all. So Manasa, you can just tell them about.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for being with us today. And at Prameya, we run Well Women's Clinic where we handle all the issues of women. And screening is also one of the priority. And we have different categories and well-known experts at Prameya who can handle all the issues. So if you need any consultation or anything related to women health, you're always welcome to approach us. And we have online yoga courses, nutrition courses and fitness. And not only yoga, we have Zumba, dance, and as shown in the video, we have art therapy, music therapy. We have many sciences under one roof. So go through our website, and here on the screen you can see our number. You can just ring us. This is our contact address. So if you have any queries, write to us.
You can also like to know, we would also like to know, like Manasa was saying earlier in the session, if you have any
specific
topics. Yeah, I think a few of them have mentioned some topics about natural methods of maintaining health, etc.
Yeah, because last time you had asked whether the microwave cooking is safe or not, so we chose this topic. So write to us.
Yeah. So yes, and those who have participated in the session, we have your contact details. You will be in our database, so all the upcoming programs we'll definitely keep you, informed about. And we'd love to have your suggestions on the topics and things like that. So that we thank you all for a very active participation, and we hope to see you again next.